So you want to start a podcast. I'm excited for you. It is one of the most rewarding, exciting things that you can do for your business or for your creative pursuit, or even if it's just a dream that you had. And I'm going to walk you through really the quick and dirty version of how to do it. I started my first podcast. I've got two now. My first show I started in June 2020. And I did it because I really wanted a different perspective out there on wellness, on health, and I wanted to connect more with people. That was the only goal. That was it. In the first month, I think there was something like 100 downloads, maybe. And now, fast forward 4 years, the show has been featured in Forbes. It's been ranked in the top 200 in the US and UK 2 years in a row for wellness and fitness. And it's something that has brought me most of my clients and customers and income. Now, I want to say all this because if you go and you look more into my profile, something you'll notice is that I am not big on social media. I have a very small following. I don't use it that much. I didn't even use YouTube for my podcast until this year. And I share that because I know there's a lot of people out there who will tell you that you need social media or you need to be big, or you might watch what they're doing and think they had amazing success. But of course, they're this social media personality. How could my show even grow? It doesn't matter. Okay. If you go through some of the steps I'm going to share with you, you can still get the impact that you want. There's a lot of possibilities for you. Now let's go into it first. The quick and dirty. What are the steps? How to start a podcast? First thing is you want to pick what you're going to talk about. That seems like an obvious thing to say, but many people say, I'm going to start a show on marketing. Okay, fine. You can go to Spotify or Apple, see the different categories broken down. That will give you some more ideas. But you want to go deeper than that. What about marketing is your message? And the way that I teach this, I have a course actually coming up soon. You can sign up for the waitlist if you want. It's called Podcast Alchemy. Link is in the show notes. One of the first exercises that I'll have people do is I'll say, okay, identify your top 3 podcasters that you really appreciate. Why? What are they doing? Doesn't need to be in your space. What are they doing? What do they talk about? What's their perspective? Look at that. Write it down. Then, separately, look at what could you talk about for hours? What is something that you feel so passionate about or you would do all the research on? What do people ask you about? Write down 3 to 5 things. If only one comes up, you're actually ahead. That makes it easier. And then the last question that is often very helpful is, and this is assuming you're going to have guests, we'll talk about whether or not to do that. What 3 guests would you interview and why? If there could be anyone, why would you want to interview them? And not just because you want to know them because they're famous, but why? This is going to give you information you need, because what you might find is I listen to this person in wellness, and what I really like about their podcast is it's unconventional. They talk about things that no one else does. I want to do that in marketing. Or you might find that I listen to this relationships podcast and I really love how this person shares honestly about their bad dates. I want to do that in my healing podcast, my nutrition podcast, share real stories. By examining what you really already enjoy, what you talk about a lot, and also who your guests would be, whether or not you bring them on, it will give you a lot of information around this. Now, I will say when people ask me, should I have guests or not? I think honestly, the best format you can have, unless you're a very well-known person already, is interviews and solo episodes. You can alternate interviews solo, or you can do 3 interviews a month and 1 solo, vice versa. It's up to you. But interviews help you grow. Solos help you connect with your audience. Strongly believe in having both. That's just my personal opinion, but if you don't want to do the solos, there are many people who have been very successful without doing it. Let's also mention here, really important point, something I haven't seen anyone talk about on these kind of videos. When you're deciding on the name of your podcast, make it searchable. Make it something someone will actually look for before they even know who you are. If you create a name that nobody knows, or at least have like a subtitle, how are they going to find you? I'm going to give you an example. My podcast, one of them is Feel Good Naked, podcast for women. This is great on 2 counts. One is Feel Good Naked. I've had people find me just because they searched for Feel Good podcast. Then I've had people find me because they were looking for a podcast for women. The name matters for this reason, and it really can help you get ahead if you think about this. If you're already big and people know you, you don't need to worry. They'll search for your name. But in the beginning, now, next step is going to be get your equipment. And I think this is where people get so hung up. Listen, if I were to tell you the first episode I recorded, how I did it, I still have the video of it, which I never shared. It's me with my hair up, got glasses on, I'm in pajamas, and I have this little Rode mic that I used to use to record fitness videos, and I'm just holding it up, doing my thing. I think I recorded it on Zoom in the beginning. It doesn't matter in the beginning. I know everyone will talk to you about how the audio matters, but you can do so much by just having a quiet room. And then in the post-production, when you edit, the software now is amazing, can take care of a lot of it. So don't get hung up on what equipment should I use. If you really, really, really desperately want to start with something, I'm going to recommend the mic I'm using now. It's a Shure mic. I'll include the link in the show notes below, and you can start with that. But please know you do not have to. It's fine. Okay? It's fine. If you've guessed, you can do it remotely over Zoom. You do not need a podcast studio. I have filmed episodes in one. I've also filmed them without. Don't need it. Start bare basics in the beginning. Don't use acquiring the things as a way to procrastinate. Next step, record and edit 4 episodes, as well as your intro. So that's when you say what the show is about. Your outro, you thank people for listening, maybe ask for reviews, and your music. I will always say to people, if you can get even more than 4 episodes, we're assuming that you're publishing weekly, that's ideal, because you don't want the stress of, let me come up with a topic every week. I've been there. Every podcaster has been there where we're recording the day before frantically, but you don't want that to be your default. So 4 episodes ready to launch, assuming that you're going weekly. Outline the content, film them through. You can film them on your phone. You can use, I think QuickTime is a really good one too. There's a couple different things that you can use. Just use what you have first. Don't worry about getting a special camera. Then you're going to pick a podcast platform. There are many of them, so I'm going to leave this to you to search for, but you can go from free to very cheap. Podcasting platform is where you upload your episodes and then they get spread out to Apple and Spotify. There's a few steps in between there, but that's the basic concept. You need a podcast hosting platform, just as with a website, you have a website host. So find that. Make sure you upload it and schedule your episodes. Lastly, market your show. This is the step everyone skips. And this is why so many people give up on podcasting. If you look at the stats, it's incredible that there's this magic number of 20 episodes is when most people will quit. If you're publishing weekly, that's usually 5 months. And they quit because they're not taking it with the same level of focus that it requires to be successful. They're not marketing it properly, and they probably haven't done the messaging work around it. Or maybe they just don't want to do it anymore. But I will say to you, as someone who's done it for 4 years, that if it's hitting your money goals and it's giving you impact and you're reaching more people, there's not really a reason to stop unless it's big life changes. So market your show. Now let's talk about how to do that, because you've got the steps now, but I think what most people want to know is, how do I market my podcast? And how do I monetize my podcast? How do I make money from it? Again, this is stuff that I go deep, deep, deep into in Podcast Alchemy. If you want to sign up for the waitlist there where you can know when it goes live. But let's talk about how to market it. There are 3 ways to market your podcast. Most biggest one, word of mouth. This is why it's so important to really plan your episodes, know your messaging, and be consistent, showing up every week. Because then people come back and then they share it. Social media is another one that you can see on my social media. I don't have a huge presence, and most of my downloads don't come from there. I'll tell you where they come from, which is super surprising in a second. But the third way is you can get on other shows. If you think about it naturally, where are you going to get in front of the most people that are most likely to listen to your show? It's people who are already listening to podcasts. So being a guest on a show is a really high priority if you're serious about growing. This is something that I did with monthly goals, how many shows to get on, pitching, getting very much in front of these people because it's a huge way to grow, but also to connect. If that's something that you're serious about doing, and I would say you could even start doing it before you launch your show would be a good idea. I have a whole program on this. It's how to be a powerful podcast guest, how to pitch them, how to find them, how to make it be an incredible one that people want to come find you. You can see the link for that in the show notes. That's a huge way. Now let me back up and tell you, where do most of my downloads come from? It's not social media. It's not Instagram. It's not YouTube. Where most of the downloads come from, and I can see the top referral, is WhatsApp. Because what happens, and this kind of blew my mind, is people will take a link of a show that they really like. Let's say I was talking about gut health in the case of my first show, Feel Good Naked. They would send that to their friends in WhatsApp, and then that person would send it on. And how powerful is that? There is no marketing more powerful, besides in person, of having someone take what you're creating and sending it to someone's personal phone number and saying, here, you know me, I'm your friend's mother, child, whatever, and I recommend this to you without you paying a thing. It's amazing. It really is. Like, the impact is incredible here. This is why messaging matters a lot. I will say that your messaging and how strong and how much you work on this content and really put your heart into it is going to directly impact how well you do in your show, regardless of any social media. Now, there will be people who will tell you differently. And for those people who already have a social media presence and, you just want to do a show next, yeah, for you, it's going to be social media probably, for sure. But for most of you that don't have a huge following or really engaged one, or maybe don't even want to be on social media, this is the way that you can do it. It doesn't take all of that. It really doesn't. Let's go into to make sure I talk about how do we monetize your podcast. Monetizing, how do I make money for my show? Most people know the obvious one, which is I have ads and those advertisers pay me. They either directly pay me to be on my show, or I have a affiliate link with them. And this you will only want to do with higher level products, so more expensive products or services. And with that link, that affiliate link, someone goes and buys because they heard about the product on my show, and then I get commission from that. Those are the main ways that people know about. But there's other things that are more in your control. You can have digital products. I have an ebook. You can have freebies also that get people into your email list. You can have one-to-one coaching. You can have group coaching. You can have events that you run. You can have paid collabs. So some podcasters do this. I don't particularly like this model, but it does work, that someone pays to be on your show. And the digital products are nice because think about it this way. Anything you create, you can sell on your show. You can be the advertiser on your show. And in fact, that's probably the main person people want to buy from because they create the relationship with you. And so when I'm working with podcast clients, traditionally I've done it one-to-one, but now in this new program that's coming out, Podcast Alchemy, I will have people before their show goes live, think about what is the product or the service you're going to sell from the very beginning, because people need to hear it a few times, and creating that whole user journey of entering with maybe the free or cheap thing and then going to the more expensive one. Lastly, something to think about is, why do you want to start a podcast? Because a lot of people will go into it thinking that it's quick, easy money, and it's not. It does require work, just as any sort of thing you're building. Even if you create a social media following, it requires some work. The people who did best in this are people who are going into it because they have a story they want to share. They want to connect with people. They want to build community. They want to share knowledge. Those are the people that go the furthest, whether that be tons of downloads, whether that be fully funding their business through it, or getting their clients through it, or just feeling a lot of impact. Because if I look back on my show, it's great that it brings clients. It's great that it brings in money. But what really, really sticks with me is getting messages from people who said, I listened to this episode and now I'm changing this in my life. Or this gave me the answer I needed. I was feeling really down. That kind of instant help that you can provide, that sense of purpose, is amazing. And so I will always encourage people to think about why you're doing this first, to really evaluate if it makes sense. But if it does, go for it, and do not let fear of who am I to do it stop you. Do not let I don't have the numbers stop you. You don't need to have any of that. The most core important thing is your messaging and the story you're trying to tell. Thank you so much for listening. I hope that this gave you ideas, that it demystified the whole process of podcasting. Know that it doesn't take a lot to start. The hardest part is actually growing the show, and it's monetizing it, marketing it. But the starting part, you got it down. You can do it. And if you want more support, sign up for that priority wait list. You'll see it in the show notes. There's a huge discount that everyone who signs up from that wait list will get. And that can also be a resource to help you. I'll see you in the next one.